Becky Lee from HKUST Library. Today's our topic is open access, your choice to increase your research and visibility and impact. So something about making a choice. Okay. So be sure you are coming to the right seminar. Okay. No one is leaving. Okay. Let's start. Before introducing you our speakers today, I would like to briefly define the topics today. Open access. So what is open access? Okay. Open access, OA, can be defined as the free online access to peer-reviewed scholarly publications that include journal articles, books, book chapters, etc. It should be free of charge and should be free of most copyright or licensing restrictions. So the world is so beautiful, okay? However, life is always not that perfect. Now, the open access can come into two different degrees. The first one is the perfect one, totally free online access and usage. And the second one is free online access with some restricted usage rights that to be granted by the licensing bodies. So there are two types. Right. So if you are an author, you can provide open access to your publications in different ways, non-exclusively. Firstly, you can archive your publications in an open access repository. We call this Green OA. Or you can publish it in an open access journal. It's also Green OA. And or you can publish it in a traditional journal by taking the OA options with charges that we call Gold OA, because you need to pay. Okay. Right. Non-exclusively means that you can take 1 and 2, or 1 and 3. But you seldom take 2 and 3 because there should be some restriction that you publish your articles in different journals. Okay. So you need to make a choice, right? So today we are glad to have different speakers to talk about different elements in this area. We will have Mr. Cheung, the Regional Open Access Publishing Manager in BioMed Central. BioMed Central is a publisher that publishing OA journal, a Green or Gold OA as well. So Mr. Cheung will talk about OA publishing versus traditional publishing, the differences and benefits, the worldwide OA development, and some licensing issue of OA. Right? And then we'll have another speaker, Mr. Pindar Wong, the co-public lead of Creative Commons Hong Kong. Mr. Wong will tell us what is Creative Commons Hong Kong. Creative Commons is one of the licensing bodies for OA. Then we will have Professor Hou Wong, our chair professor and associate dean of School of Science, HKUST. Professor Wong will share with us as an OA journal editor and an OA author. And finally, I will introduce our HKUST institutional repository. It is an open access repository for our HKUST scholar to self-archive his publication. Okay, so we'll have a lot of topics today. So can't wait to start. Let me introduce our first speaker, Mr. Cheung. Mr. Cheung works in BioMed Central Asia team to promote open access, Green or Gold. And he also promotes BioMed Central, Chemistry Central, Springer Open Journals, and other services in the regions. So please welcome Mr. Cheung.
Thank you very much. Okay, these are the topics I'm going to share with you today. The first part, Becky's already defined what's open access. Then the next step is how the open access is relevant to you. So I will share with the benefit of them. And then how's the open access development in the past and right now, and what will be the future, the next step. And because then it's talking about encourage you to publishing, then you need to define or how to choose which one is a good open access journal and which one is a not good open access journal. And finally, we will have a very brief introduction of our company. Okay. For the benefits of open access, basically we can divide it into three major parts. The first one, it will be how to helping to increase your research visibility and impact. I will show you an example later using our some of the papers published with us later. The second is the benefit is that it can help improve the impact factors of the journals. I can also have an example for you. The third one is also a bigger scope. It's enhancing innovation. Yeah, I will also explain it further as with an example. Okay, this is our article. I will take it out from our website. You can also go into biomedcentral.com. You can see our articles. The next one, I'm picking up one of the articles here, article number 8. This article published in the October 10th, and that means it's right now around three weeks. Yeah, and this articles already can got 30,000 access already. And if we go into further, these the articles looks like. And other than that, this is the thing 30,000 access and got a metric score for 43 already. And the other thing, the good thing is, and also the most, I think, amazing thing is, this article will be already full text upload in PubMed. You can find it in PubMed. You can find it in Google Scholar already. And this article already got 1 citation in PubMed in a very, very short time. That is something why open access can help you. But of course, there's no guarantee if your article published after you send it to us, every article will get so high impact or got the citation so fast. But in open access, there's something, this is one example to try the industry, there's a possibility to increase your visibility and impact. The next thing, including how to improve a journal. This is one of our journal. You will see that the impact factor of the journal from 2000 is going down until 2006, and then it is going up until this year, the latest impact factor. And the reason why it is a major changes and in the last 7 years the impact factor is improving is this journal transferred from a traditional subscription model going to with us, and then using the open access publishing model to publish the journal. And you know, impact factor is a measurement on the number of citation over the number of how many articles published. So that is indirect evidence to show you that is how to improving the impact as well and the citation as well. There is an example. I'm not sure anyone heard of this kid. I think for Jack, he is getting famous. Here is around 15 years old, but this is news for almost more than 2 years already. The reason is why he's getting famous is by the time he's still a high school student, but one of his relatives is getting a pancreatic cancer. So of course, as his relative will go to the hospital to see the doctors, but at the same time, because he's a very good relative to him, he also going to the website, going to the internet to find out what is it any latest treatment, what can he do for that for the pancreatic cancer. But of course, finally, he cannot do anything help. But he found out later. Thank you for the one of the journal called POS Medicine is another open access journal. And from this journal, he identified the biomarker to identify the pancreatic cancer. And the reason because he's a high school student, but there's going to the interview. He said he only got 2 good friends. One is Google. The other second good friend is Wikipedia. That is the only source he can find it out free of charge, and then provide the information to him. And then later, based on this article, right now he already developed a diagnostic method. And this diagnostic method for the pancreatic cancer, you can see the result is much faster, much cheaper, and more accurate. And I think this year he already made this his diagnostic method to apply for the patent already. And right now he's already right now he's I think it should be 17 or 18. But he is very famous. You can go to TED Talk or Google, find a lot of interview. Even he's in the CNN, meeting the President Obama as well. I will just make a very quick comparison. What is the difference between traditional publishing and open access publishing model? In the traditional publishing, in terms of the accessibility, because it's by subscription, that means only the subscribers can read it. Maybe by the library to subscribe it, or you may individual subscribe, maybe pay-per-view or something. But open access publishing, basically, as Becky already mentioned, there is all. This is open to all. This is free of charge. And readers, because it's only for subscribers, that means the reader is limited. In open access publishing, it's all. There's no limitation. So that's why if you publish your article in open access environment, your article will be the whole world will be your audience, rather than just a very limited research people. And licensing, we are also using different type of licensing. In the traditional, we are using the copyright. And in the open access publishing, we are using the Creative Commons license. Today we have an expert, Pindar. He will share with you more about the licensing details of Creative Commons and what is the advantage. And for the reusability, traditional publishing basically is no. Traditionally, in theory, if you want to make some photocopy of even for your own article, theoretically you need to get the permission from the original publishers. Theoretically, I would say. But in open access publisher, basically no, you can use it, but as long as you fulfill the requirement. Pindar will also explain more about that. And for the payment, with a library or reader, but for the open access publishing, it is free to the reader. But because most of the open access publishers or journals are also commercially running, so that's why they also need to have some revenue to sustain their business model. Instead of they charge the readers, they will charge the author. Or so that's why sometimes author need to pay that, or it may be sponsored. Some of the societies, they may be using their membership fee or whatever. They will sponsor their members to publish their articles in the open access journals. So that's why we see a sponsor. And in general, traditional publishing, they have a pay charge, color charge. In open access, basically there's no such charges. And page number, yes, for you to write the reference, but open access publishing. But there is a difference. But there is also the thing is they are basically the same. In terms of the editorial process, peer review process, and also the impact factor. That is that they are using the same as the traditional professional journals. They go through the same whole process as well. So open access, that is only the way to how to disseminate your final research paper. It doesn't mean the quality. So that's why it's one thing you need to bear in mind on that. This is the open access development, and they will be going I will go very fast. Because it's if you look at it, you spend a lot of time. One of the very popular, making open access very popular is from the American government, NIH Public Access Policy. They require all the NIH publicly funded research, they need to be deposited into the repository, which is in PubMed in America. So that's why right now, that's why you have the PubMed, everyone go to PubMed, or why but I'm not sure how many people could care, why they got the full text, which is no charge or no need to charge anything, because it is under the NIH Public Access Policy. 2 years ago, from the RC UK, from United Kingdom, they also have an open access policy. The whole open access policy is effective last year, April. Wellcome Trust, which is the second largest medical research funding bodies in the world, they have an open access policy. They require all their funded research need to be follow their requirement on open access. They even have an open access fund. That means that if the researchers or the university, they do not have any or sufficient funding to provide them to pay the publication charge or the article processing charge, they can apply for that, but it's mainly for UK. Actually, it's not just in the medical. For example, World Bank, they also have an open access policy. UNESCO also have an open access policy. Max Planck Society from Germany, they also have an open access policy. Last year, Global Science Council, Global Research Council, they have a meeting in Berlin. And after this meeting, they are making a statement, the action towards open access to the publication. They are also encouraging the scientific outputs to be in open access. Even the G8 science minister, they also have making a statement on the open access. Last year, the Nobel Prize winner in the medicine award, after he received the award, he also making an announcement and asking his laboratory and also his researcher to not publish any more paper in the top niche journals like Science, Cell, and Nature. You can try to understand what the reason behind. But I think that is one of the good signs because there is more and more top scientists. They are also supporting open access. Even World Health Organization, they also have a open access policy. Scope 3 project. This is more relevant to high energy physics because a lot of people when they are when the people they want to publish in open access, they may be one of the objection is that they need to pay the article processing charge. So that's why in this high energy physics subject areas, the researchers and also the library come together. They form a consortium to try to reallocate the original subscription budget to pay the article processing charge. Springer is also having 2 journals to support this project. In Hong Kong, Julian is also one of the members supporting this project. That means Julian is also represent HKUST as well. This is one of the latest one from China, CAS, Chinese Academy of Science. They also have an open access policy, even together with the National Nature Science Foundation as well. They also require all their research paper to be in open access. That is from earlier last month from Australia. The chief scientist also will include open access in the long-term vision as well. This is from Sweden. They are also making a national open access policy. And this is also last month from European Commission. They are also making the open access policy, but this is a revised one. This is another policy from India, and even from Finland, they are trying to make open access in the year 2017. That is a more and more government level. Most of the mandate are more on the government level, but actually, the next step is called open data, because for open access, we are encourage researchers to share their research paper, just the result. But in open data, we are encourage researchers to even moving one step forward to share their original data set. So that means that in the future, in the, under the open data environment, you may using other people's data, you don't need to collect the data anymore if you're doing the same kind of experiment. But I don't go through it very detail, but there's a trend. There's a very quick summary when what is going on, how far in the world right now. There are 492 mandates. There is the policy, open access policy around the world. 276 is from the institutional level. 90 of them is of funders like Wellcome Trust or Max Fund Societies. Right now is a 3,800 repository, which is the repository, institutional repository or subject repositories. There's more than 10,000 open access journals. Only 5,800 of them is searchable in article level, and only around 1,000 of them got the impact factor. So that's because open access is a quite new concept. So for journals, especially a new journal, when they want to having the impact factor, it takes a few years. So that's why this number is still getting very small, but I believe that this number will be getting higher and higher in the future. One thing is very important, open access doesn't mean it's a peer review, so there's also some open access journal which is non-open, not peer reviewed. There also some no English. Right now altogether is a 1.7 million open access article in the world. And also open access also moving to the book direction. There is around very few number, but 2,300 open access book already in the world. Let's look at what's happening in Hong Kong. Right now we have 4 mandates and 12 repository and 38 open access journals. This is the figures. I take it out from our company. And the number of submission and publication from Hong Kong. The red column is the number of the submission. The blue column is the number of publication. The green column is the number of still under the peer reviewed journals. During the last few years, until year 2012, the number is quite steady, I would say. Starting from year 2013, last year, the numbers keep increasing, but these figures until last month. So I believe that the total number of submissions by the end of this year should be more than 300. I'm not sure the reason, but I believe that maybe the RAE requirement may be one of the reasons for why there's the submission is increasing so significant, and also the publication as well. How to choose an open access journals? That is very important for you. Is one of website called Scholarly Open Access. Actually, is prepared by a librarian. So actually, library and also librarians is quite supporting in your research work and also publish your paper. I don't go into detail, but from this website, you can find out the list of publisher and list of standalone journals. Then when you are receiving any call for paper email in the future, I would suggest you, if you don't know the journal, then you make the first website you come to here to check whether they are on the list. If they are on the list, then I will recommend you to submit your paper to them. These are the figures. I didn't update it, but I looked at the website. Right now, from the website, there's around more than 600 predatory open access publisher and around 400 something predatory open access journals. But when you're looking at this number, it seems not big. But some of the predatory open access publisher, they have more than 100 journals. I didn't go through one by one, but I think there will be maybe more than 10,000 predatory open access journals in the market. So it need to be very careful. There is another association, called Open Access Scholarly Publisher Association. If the publishers or the journals belong to the member of it, I think it will provide you more confidence for you to submit a paper to. If you would like to know more about the open access, there's two reading materials I suggest for you. This is a book. It is published by one of the open access advocates called Peter Super, and it is tell you the history and the whole development of open access. And there's a lot of the hyperlink. If you order e-version, then you can click on that. You can read all those relevant research papers. There's a lot. This is another new one. It's I think it is published around 2 months ago. It is open access journal market report. It's published by Simba. If you would like to know more about the open access publishing industry, the journal, and the future development, I think this report maybe provide you more information. But unfortunately, these two book and report are not open access. You need to still need to subscribe it. Yes. So that's why, they also need to sustain their business. So, luckily, this today is we call it Open Access Week, and worldwide, if you go to openaccessweek.org, then you can find out a lot of activities actually happening around the world in different universities, in different funding bodies talking about open access. Or if you would like to know what happens around the world, not just in Hong Kong, but I will suggest it's a website you can go to look at it further information. And also you can get a lot of different links together as well. Just a very quick introduction of our company, as Becky already mentioned about it. We are part of Springer. We are originally we started our business in year 2000, but we are bought over by Springer. So right now we are part of Springer, and also making Springer is one of the largest open access publishers in the world. And yeah. Just skip it. And there's my contact. That's in case you have anything you want to know more about. Please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. Thanks. Let me introduce our second speaker, Mr. Pindar Wong, from Physical Public Lead of Creative Commons Hong Kong. So Mr. Wong is the chairman of Verify Hong Kong Limited. He served on the Global Commission on Internet Governance. He also served on the Digital 21 Strategy Advisory Committee of the Hong Kong government and the editorial board of Internet Packet Journal. So previously, he co-founded Hong Kong's first licensed ISP at HKUST in 1993. He was the first vice chairman of ICANN. He is a member of the World Wide Web Consortium's Credentials and Web Payment Community Groups. So let's welcome Mr. Wong.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I also serve on the University School of Engineering Advisory Committee. So part of this afternoon is my contribution back to this committee. So what I'd like to do is start with what I've been advising HKUST, since that's quite close to home. And I look at Creative Commons and all of this as part of your toolbox for what I would call intellectual property strategy. And so what I've been advising HKUST is to look at how it conducts its intellectual property strategy in the aggregate. And copyright is one aspect of that, and so is patents and all the things that you're familiar with. So today, I was asked 3 questions in preparation. I reworded it slightly with a cheat, which is what are the 6 Creative Commons copyright licenses? But before I begin, I would like to ask, are there any burning questions operational? You heard Creative Commons mentioned several times. It's quite well known within this field. Are there any questions that you would like me to cover during this little brief blurb? Raise your hand. Okay. Feel free to interrupt at any point in time. So what I would like to start with is a simple model of what I would look at as a cost-benefit analysis of why you would even consider using a Creative Commons copyright license. And here it's quite a simplistic mental model that, I look at research as really simply sort of money in, and you do your research, and out comes something, the research results, which has, again, the 2 keywords of visibility and impact, right? And perhaps something else. So visibility is a question, well, visible to who, what, over what time frame, how do we reason about that? Impact, you've heard about different measurements of impact. I think Leo mentioned one, there's a traditional age index. We all have our own biases, how we select, how we do our research, to hopefully not publish in what I call the JIR, which is the Journal of Irreproducible Results. Why? Because there's a huge spectrum. So that's really my mental model of how I view this whole space. Obviously, there's a feedback loop, which is as you are successful in your research and getting impact and the visibility that you require, hopefully more funding comes in. Right? So it's a little loop here. So that's why you should be interested in looking at your own cost benefit of how you manage your own intellectual property. What is your personal IP strategy? So the short answer is look, it's all on the web. Click on here, Creative Commons licenses. That's the cheat. I'm very glad that when Peter and I talked earlier, we both focused on the same book, which is by Peter Suba, Open Access. If you actually click on this, you can download it. So that's what I'm going to do, to, in some sense, demonstrate slightly the change of access model, as soon as this works. So what it's doing right now is it's downloading the whole book, I hope, that Leo mentioned. And in that book, in the first few covers, there are these buttons, just like at the bottom of your presentation, just like at the first slide, there's a little bottom, yeah, there you go. So all you ever need to know about, just to give you a primer, is in this book, which was originally it is published, it's published by MIT Press, Essential Knowledge Series. And what I would like to do, if I can, is move to this page, because this is kind of what CC is about. It's all about copyright. Now, copyright is one aspect of intellectual property. Patents is probably what you've heard about. Leo also touched on data, which is kind of where things are going. But you'll notice in these buttons, if I can use my little marker, these little cute little icons. This one here, this is CC, which stands for Creative Commons. And then you've got this little humanoid figure, BY. And it says, this book incorporates certain materials published under a CC BY license, and copyright in those underlying materials is owned by Spark. There's another one which is CC BY NC, which has a $ with a line through it. And NC stands for non-commercial. So really what I want to touch on is that Creative Commons, the copyright licenses, has 4 basic ingredients, which you mix and match to basically derive the 6 licenses. No big science, right? And those different icons, their meanings we can get into in the Q&A, but basically they combine to form the 6 different licenses. And you use these 6 different licenses in certain cases to achieve your intellectual property strategy, to achieve your aims. However, there's one thing in common. All of the 6 different licenses just like in academic research, has an attribution clause. In other words, if you do use that material, then you are obliged to effectively cite, right, where you got it from. So that's one common element in all of the 6 different licenses. And in fact, if you looked at in Leo's statistics, about 75% of all those open access used under CC BY, this one, which is the most liberal of licenses, which means you actually can make money from it if someone uses it. The NC means non-commercial, which means effectively the licensee can't necessarily make money from it. But anyway, we'll get into the detail. I just wanted to try and ground the discussion by saying, look, the book itself on open access is itself licensed under CC. So please click on that. My slides are licensed under CC. Download them, click on them, it's all there. It says, effective June 15th, 2003, which is last year, this book will be subject to a CC BY NC license. So this afternoon, I hope there will be lots of questions on what does that mean? How do you understand that, and why should I even care? So I just wanted to begin with that because, again, that was mentioned in the earlier slide. So the short answer of just reading the website on just CC licenses, the first URL is a cheat and it's inadequate because copyright licensing is all represented in this very clever diagram. Who can tell me what this diagram represents? I like to always begin with a question. This represents copyright licensing in a nutshell. Any takers? What is this? It's a blur. Okay. What else? What else do we know? This is copyright in a nutshell. Okay, I call this copyright is a gray area. A little bit of humor, doesn't work. But the details are important. Okay, so let me just go through a little bit about CC at the talk today. I want to go through the basics, which is why Creative Commons. There's context in terms of when we move from the analog world, paper, right, books, to the digital world, when we move from the physical to the virtual. In all of this, I want you to bear in mind that this has to be, copyright needs to be understood in context. Context of your own IP strategy, context in terms of your own research, the university's objectives, Hong Kong society, etc., etc. So with that, I'll touch on the licenses, what's the point of CC, what's its value and purpose, and who uses it. In the context of these guides, which is on open access. So I just want to pull out a random one, Hong Kong Use Open Access Policy, that's one of them. We talked about the different mandates that are available in Hong Kong. And within this last 6 or 7 year battle on the copyright amendment of our own laws, which is, I think there's a meeting on Saturday that continues the 7-year discussion. And I'll close with some speculations on really where things might be going in terms of who's actually reading your article, who's actually reading your data, who is actually generating the research insight in terms of artificial intelligence and something to do with automated discovery. The reason why this is quite timely is I just came back from Kyoto in this great conference called Science, Technology and Society. In that week I met 4 Nobel laureates and 1 astronaut. So some things are quite fresh. So one large step for Hong Kong, that's why I'm here. It's great to have this discussion. This photograph is Earthrise, and it's, I think, one of the first pictures of Earth from the moon. And you can find this. I mean, how much did it cost to generate this photograph? Quite a bit. You've got to figure out how to build a rocket and get to the moon and back. You've got to figure out, go to the moon, take it back. And this is licensed, freely, right? Under NASA, it's now on the Wikipedia. So I use that as, again, an example of not just monetary value, but societal value, right? For what is the value of that photograph? So I hope that, this open access movement, which is kind of like almost religious, right, is we can ground that, because ultimately there is a business model behind it. There is a cost-benefit analysis, which is why I had my first slide. So what the CC really does, again, it's copyright. The basic problem is that copyright, the default setting is all rights reserved. In other words, if you didn't get permission to use it, you don't have it. And this caused huge problems when we first moved from analog. It was fine with sort of analog world because you have scribes who had to sit there and copy out the Bible, what have you. But in terms of academic research, I think that the whole basis of the journal, as Clay Shirky mentions in several of his videos, he's a sociologist who follows this, is to try and synchronize the dialogue. to synchronize the research agenda. How does the science in the large figure out how to talk to one another in the same language? How do we talk about, prioritize what is important? How do we share discoveries? And so all aspects to do this is actually sharing and starting a dialogue. So that's really what CC is about, is how to maximize the sharing aspect, the digital creativity, and the innovation without the law getting in the way. Right? And I preface that because the law is that all rights are reserved. And so CC just introduces some choice. Okay? It allows you to say, hey, look, you as the author of this work, you want to retain some rights. And out of the 6 licenses, it depends on which rights you want to decide to retain, you as the author. And you as the author have that copyright, unless, of course, you've assigned it, for example, to Springer or someone else, okay? So CC, in a nutshell, is really some rights reserved. We can go into that later on. But in Hong Kong's context, we originally had the Copyright Amendment Bill 2011. It's now 2014. In between, we had this Internet Article 23, free flow of data, et cetera, and parity discussions. So I wanted to just paint the context of copyright in Hong Kong, because that was one of the motivations for the volunteer team that founded CC. We're all a bunch of volunteers. I'm doing this on my own time. In fact, I'm stealing Khaled afterwards, so this is a really good time. Founded by Professor Ying Chan, the head of the Journalism, Media and Studies Center in Hong Kong U, and Rebecca McKinnon, who is also, again, these are not lawyers, they were actually from media reporters, but Rebecca McKinnon founded Global Voices. She was also a CNN anchorhead in Tokyo, and she wrote the book, Consent to the Network. We had 2 legal leads, specialists in copyright at Hong Kong U, who did this all again on their own time. Li Ya Hong and Alice Lee. The law department didn't want to touch this stuff because it's too controversial, too hot. And the good news is, as of yesterday evening, I've retired. So Ben Cheung, he's an award-winning, he's been with CC for the very beginning as one of the volunteers. He's the co-public lead for CC Hong Kong, and again, here are a list of supporters. So what we did initially was we wanted to track how many people in Hong Kong use the CC licenses. And in 2011, it's been 7 years now since this has been going on. That's kind of the reason why I've stood down. We need new blood. Back in 2011, we had over 450,000 license works. I think CC now has in the order of 500 million license works. Again, these numbers aren't really that meaningful because size is one of the chief problems, as you know, in research is signal to noise. Right? You actually want to be the signal, and noise is increasing all the time. There's a lot of junk out there. The good news is that the search tools are improving in and of itself. So the CC licenses, again, we've been doing primarily focused in 2007 when we began, because of the Copyright Amendment law in Hong Kong, and my involvement, as was mentioned, in terms of the beginnings of the internet industry, had this great global infrastructure, great local broadband and wireless infrastructure. Why can't we make best use of it? And so a group of us decided to introduce this thing 7 years ago. And we recognized at the very beginning that this is really social change, right? This is going to be a long haul. And I used to deal with a lot of university students who were the founders of the Wikipedia movement in Hong Kong. And they needed CC to do their work. Right? So Wikipedia, as you know, uses CC licenses now. And they wanted to have something which is conformant to Hong Kong copyright ordinance to be able to do that. So we had a customer, right? We had a very clear customer. It was the Wikipedia community. There were university students at that time who said, hey, we want to participate in this great experiment with Wikipedia, but we want to have protection of our work under the Hong Kong copyright law. So that's what we did. We ported this Creative Commons, these 6 different licenses, 7 years ago under the Hong Kong copyright ordinance. Okay? If only to provide another option. Okay? It's just one tool in your tool bag. When you're a hammer, you tend to view everything as a nail. I view CC as just one of those tools. I'm not religious about it. I mean, you have to know, I think expertise is when you know how to use the right tool under the right circumstances. So where we focused really on education. That's why I'm here this afternoon. Primarily because at that point in time, there was a new secondary school subject called liberal studies, which is going to be compulsory. And in Hong Kong, as you know, we have quite a big industry in textbooks. I think 6 big publishers. And you can't really write a textbook on current affairs a year ahead because the affairs haven't occurred. So what we did was we worked with RTHK to encourage the critical thinking aspect to produce something called the RTHK Creative Archive. So again, the focus is on education. So just by the way of update, it's been over 10, 11 years now that CC is now effectively the de facto standard for sharing sort of text information, human readable text, on the internet. And we've gone through 4 different versions of the licenses. Originally it started in the United States, and now there's over 70 jurisdictions all over the planet which use it. Last year in November we went through version 4 of the license. What this means is as we deploy these licenses, copyright, like a lot of intellectual property in general, is defined by geographical region, right? The laws of the land, right? So the principle, there's a sovereignty principle. It's geographically defined, which doesn't quite work on the internet, right? And that's again one of the reasons why CC was introduced. And we have a new CEO and we've begun to get involved with policy, because before CC was relatively agnostic. They said, here are our licenses, we're copyright licenses. We do not provide legal advice, and none of this stuff here is legal advice. But here are our licenses. We'll train you how they should be used correctly, because these licenses are powerful legal tools which can be used incorrectly very quickly. And that goes to the aspect to do with signal versus noise, right? It's quality and the quantity. The difference here is that CC now, as far as the board is concerned, I met with the board member in Korea last week, is that now the CC can actually advocate for copyright reform. Before it was neutral, right? So it's quite clearly that some aspects to do with copyright in the digital age needs to evolve. That's again why I point back to our own debates with the LegCo about how Hong Kong copyright should evolve in the digital era. So 4.0 is released. One of the biggest problems that we faced when deploying Creative Commons in Europe, again, all these different jurisdictions, we had feedback, we had experience from the market. Just like you do your experiment hypothesis, we go out and we test it, and we double check. We had these licenses, we played them into the market, and all these local variations of law came up. And the biggest one was actually dealing with the hot aspect of open data. Why? Because in some jurisdictions, data you can't copyright, right? Data is data, just a table. In some places, if you compile that data and you add value to it, you have something called not exactly a copyright license. It's a copyright-like license called a sui generis database right. Okay, so CC 4.0 was designed to really try to cater for these database rights. With database of data, because turns out the following. Since copyright by default is all rights reserved, right? That's the default option, right? Setting it on. When you actually want to give away your rights, not give away, license, I think is the better term, and share your data, turns out it's really tough. Right? The whole law is constituted to go in one direction. You want to go the other way. You actually say, no, I want to share it. Turns out legally, it's actually really tough. And so 4.0 was focused to work around or cater to the genomics industry or big pharma or those where you do actually want to share multiple terabytes of data, right? And you had one slide on that. And that's kind of where things are kind of going. CC is not the only choice, right? If you really look at this, there are those who have the view, just to give a balanced opinion, of another license called the Open Data Commons Open Database License. Right? So again, use the license that meets your strategic objectives of how you want to manage your intellectual property strategy, both individually, as an engineering school, as a school, or whatever, or as a university, or more importantly, as a research community, which can be anywhere. Because a lot of the stuff you'll notice now is that the cost of delivery, right, so-called the publication model. I mean, it's not just the New York Times or any of the newspapers which have had to evolve their business model. It's also the journals themselves, right? So open choice, I think, is your version of that. As again, you can choose how you wish to license, but there's a cost to it, right? Just like there's a cost to everything. So I don't want to get religious about, oh, this is free, kumbaya. No, I think you have to be very strategic in your thinking. have to know the cost benefit, you have to know what those are, and this afternoon's discussion is supposed to help with that. So just like anything, CC's licenses have terms and conditions. You actually have to understand what that means. So what we've been talking about, what I've been trying to argue for HKUST, is introducing intellectual property literacy, not as an elective in the third year, but actually from the very beginning. In fact, we've been trying to do it in high school. Right? What I talked about in Japan is actually beyond that. I'm talking about ethical literacy and ethical fitness. But right now, if we're focusing on copyright, people have to understand the whole intellectual property space. When do you use patents? When do patents work? When does copyright? When do you use, for example, in terms of your intellectual property strategy, and you have the R&D rant arm of doing defensive publications, for example. So it's all part of your strategy, right? The problem is complexity, right? Managing this stuff's not easy. As a scientist, you don't probably want to learn about this stuff. Sorry, you have to. And this day and age, security and hidden costs. So there's all these costs involved, generates friction. And what's happening right now in the large are that these communities of publishers, researchers, and those who consume the data are evolving, and they're evolving very, very quickly to try and share the information among themselves. Why? To try and move their research along and the results to have higher impact. So outside of the 6 licenses, there are 2 other ones. I talked about copyright. Copyright in theory has a term limit, a time limit, after which the material falls into what is called the public domain. Okay. Now, if you want to do so, and you want to be very clear about the public domain in the digital world, there are 2 other types of tools called CC0, which is primarily used for things like metadata, right? Data about data, and the public domain mark. I won't get into that too much. But what we've tried to also do, because Hong Kong has very high costs, right? Our real estate costs are very high, we're all trying to make rent, it's been very difficult to get this whole grassroots community going because everyone's got focusing on the way. So one of the problems that we've been trying to solve is how do we make money from all of this, right? How do you, I should say, how do you resource yourselves? How do you access the resources you need to form the repository, to get the bandwidth, to have the editorial review done at a quality level that is acceptable to you? And so what I've been trying to do privately is foster the iTunes model, okay, for intellectual property, which is one new initiative in Hong Kong called intellectual property trading, which is the legal licensing of intellectual property, so for 99 cents. So we've got 5 now intellectual property exchanges in Hong Kong. And all of this goes back to the very basic line for Hong Kong, which is using economics to drive policy. Right? So it's not just you doing your research in a university, it's how to bridge the research results to product or service, closing that gap, the innovation gap, you mentioned that. These are quite large topics. So CC is just one aspect of that. So what I want to do is also demonstrate that rather than me write the slides for this, I'm going to copy, because in essence, as was mentioned in the book I pointed to you, there's an economic term which is education in the large, it's like medicine, it's non-rivalrous. Which means if I impart my knowledge or experience to you, in general, I'm no worse off. Right? It's unlike any other physical good, which if I give you something, I lose something. Right? The other great example I like to use is medicine. The doctor heals you, right? Is that doctor worse off for healing you? No. So the new economics, really, we don't have good metrics for. The way we calculate GDP, GNI, and that stuff like that doesn't cater for this new sharing economy. And what we're seeing is that this is exhibited best in physics research in terms of open access. So what I'm going to do right now, again, these slides are all for your benefit, is to talk briefly about those little buttons that, if you can click on CC for Educators. So in sum, we can get to the little icons. There's 4 different ingredients, right? Like cooking, right? There's all of them have attribution, and you mix it together to create 6 different licenses. Again, all the details on the website, but there's a caveat, there's a catch. Okay, there's a catch for using these 6 different licenses, and the biggest catch is that once it's irrevocable, you cannot revoke it. You know, once you stamp, first of all, you have to make sure that the license works, the works that you license are really yours. And if I get Disney or some large content producer and I stick the CC license on, that's probably not too wise, because it's not yours to license. Right? So there's three different captures. Quite simply, that all of the licenses have attribution, so you have to say, hey, where did you get it from? You have to decide whether or not you as licensor want to retain commercial rights to the copyright. Right? Copyright is bounded. There are some other rights, like moral rights, for example, which, and also fair use and fair dealing. Don't want to get too detailed into that. But the mix and match really goes into creating these 6 different licenses. So very briefly, these slides are all about education in the large. Click, click, click. Oops, sorry, that's the very end. Yes, and a lot of people are using them. So again, I'm not really one to talk about the movement, because again, these are individual decisions, and jumping on the bandwagon without knowing why is pretty dangerous. So I talked about the button, right? These are just a shorthanded form for once you get used to the language of CC, you can see it, you understand what it means. But the most important aspect, which is not really touched on, is this. The CC, when you license your work, you license it under 3 licenses. Right? One, effectively, which we call the human deed, is a short form. You can read it, and your mother should be able to understand what that means. Then you actually have the legal code, which is the legal, it's written for lawyers. That's really where all the legal focus, that's why we had Liang Hong and Alice Lee look at the porting the license to Hong Kong copyright, because it has to be conformant with Cat 528. And then we have something which is here, which is the most important in my view as a former computer scientist, which is it's machine readable. And why is that important? It's important because if people can't, if the search engines can't find your work effectively on the internet, it doesn't exist. When I talked about this irrevocability aspect, that's just a practical matter. Once you've let it go on the internet, you try and get it back. Right? You can't. So that's as a practical matter. So I just pick here. So let me just take through. So the 6 licenses, because this is what this presentation is about. I'm not going to go through all the details, but what you'll notice is that there's attribution, there's a little man on all of them. So just like your research results, you're always going to have to attribute. Now, each of these licenses has a spectrum of very liberal rights, and it gets more and more narrow depending on the license you choose. And there are good reasons for that, because when you start talking about intellectual property literacy, eyes glaze over. Right? And when you don't quite know what you're doing, it's good to be very conservative. Right? Do you want anyone to make money from your work? No, no, no. I want to retain the right to make money. So a lot of people begin with the crossed out $, which is non-commercial. Non-commercial really means that you, as the author, you retain the right to make money from your work. Right? Other people, no. You don't want them to make money off your work. Okay. Other ones are this. It's like a recycled sign. It's a loop, share alike, which means your licensing terms, you want them to pass it on. That was copied from, borrowed from the open source software movement. You'll notice that these class of licenses in general were open licenses. Right? And they make a very good distinction between free and libre. Free as in like in price, libre as in free as in freedom. So we have non-commercial, that's crossed out $, which I talked about. We can have the equal sign. Equal signs mean don't change it. Right? No derivatives, you can't change it. Right? It's okay for you to know my blood type, but I really don't want you to change my record. Okay, just like your basic. And this is important when you start dealing with data, because if you want to publish in the Journal of Irreproducible Results, you're welcome to change the data. But if you actually want to contribute to science, using the scientific method, and you want others to be able to reproduce your work, and what we're beginning to find is 2 things. And I go into the speculation category, right? Last year was pivotal, right about June. There are more robots reading the World Wide Web than humans. Right? And with the pace of AI, we had the Turing test passed earlier this year, lots of work in AI. It's unclear to me, in the world of big data, where the one of the arguments is that it's so much noise now, right? It's very difficult to find the signal as a human being. But computers may not have that problem. And so computers might now, if they look through big data, right, don't just do a statistically relevant small sampling, but you can have it all. And generate an algorithm which it actually produces propensity, but no one understands what the algorithm is because it's produced from the data. So these are possible futures in terms of how the nature of research. And why is this important? This is important because the cost of doing basic research is becoming exponential. Right? Now, if you think about all the different, remember IBM labs, right? Bell Labs, you really know you made it when you had a lab, right? And so what we're seeing right now is not only that at a big corporate level that it's too expensive to have a lab by itself, even at the national level, it's actually too expensive for sovereigns. And so what we talk about these days in basic research is networks or communities, right? And communities that can really work together whilst pooling the IP that needs to be pooled together and then being able to exploit the benefits. So I just want to go back to close with the first slide, which if I'm not lost is this one, which is speculations. Did you see that? The most important speculation, so machine readability I've gone through, AI being used to actually read your work. There are now machines that can make summaries of your work, probably more grammatically correct and insightful than a human can do that. So we're actually misgauging how fast AI is proceeding. And automated discovery, which is what I talked about. The one which is off the bottom is the difference between stock and flow, which is what I call the Wikipedia argument. The Wikipedia argument for me is, how can anyone of worth, anything of worth be produced when everyone just rapidly just slams up whatever they want on and edit an online encyclopedia? One of the two gems was Wikipedia, right? One of them was Wikipedia. And the difference over time is that, yes, it initially was crap. It was no good. But when you've got a million eyeballs constantly polishing this thing, it's probably now probably one of the first sources I go to when looking for it. And that's the difference between what I call stock, the original pool of IP that you think you have that's really, really valuable, or that you thought was really valuable, right? And the rate of change, the rate of innovation, what I call the flow. And what we talk about in the internet world is that we actually don't care about the stock. Yes, it was valued in the old way with distribution, the cost of curation, the cost of organizing it nicely, and distribution was in fact most of the cost. Nowadays you can throw it up on a cloud. The cost of distribution is tending towards zero. And so what's happening right now is people are realizing, hey, why should I pay for Joe Journal when in fact all the experts, we're providing the expertise as my peers, right? They just publish it. They don't know anything about the implications of diabetes research on toe clippings, right? And so the aspect now that communities are forming, so we're actually in a position of transition, right? One rice bowl is being broken, and a smaller rice bowl, or many different rice bowls are being kicked and pulled. My question to this group is, again, bearing in mind stock versus flow, bearing in mind that even HKUST, as a research university, all its resources, has to compete in a much wider world with their bigger budgets, etc., etc. How is HKUST or the Hong Kong libraries going to work together with other groups, again, other networks, to work together? Now, earlier this year in January, HKUST had a collaboration with MIT. Right? Even they have the same issue, right? Which is all about networks, not just like sort of social networks. Right? The currency these days is who provides me the insight. right now the rate of publications of journals in probably any one area is, you could probably spend all day reading and you will never catch up. Right? But every now and then your colleague says, you know, Leo, you should really look at this paper. They act as a very high pass filter, and they save you time. So what happens right now is, yes, the needle in the haystack, the noise is getting really, really large. But two advances are happening. We're having more needles to find in the haystack, and it's not us human beings who are finding them. But also because the way that the signal comes through is through insight produced by other humans in your research network. So my question is, yes, CC is a tool. It's one of many tools. There are several. What is your individual intellectual property strategy? How are you going to articulate that? How are you going to make the impact? And how are you going to gain the visibility? Last but not least, the visibility angle I think is spurious. Sorry. Okay, because if you think, you know, because the answer is it depends. Right? If you're a beginning researcher who's never been published, then any publication is going to be good. Right? I'm not going to get, I may or may not end up in Science or Cell or have you first off the bat. Right? So at the same time, when you're an established player, right, then hey, you only want to be published in ones with your peer group. So the value, the visibility angle. And so right now, I don't know what Springer Open Choice is. It provides you an option to license under Creative Commons, things like 9,000 US to go that option, right? Why is that? What costs need to be recovered? So it's actually going to cost you to license your work using their platform on using their open choice. Now, would it be better if you had such a good result just to get the HKUST PR department, spend your $9,000 to get you some press time? Okay. So again, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Don't look only at copyright as the only tool that you have, because you don't. So I'm going to close with the very first slide, as I like to do, which is this one. Sorry about the formatting. I'm looking for this question mark. I really don't care about H indices, your biases, and all that stuff. Everyone knows about this. Right? I've actually presented nothing really new. What I do want to focus on is what's not in the diagram, and that's this circle. Because, again, the major point is stock versus flow. More photographs were taken last year or the last 2 years than the digital photographs of the whole of humanity beforehand. Doesn't mean the quality is there, right? So this is, again, the difference between signal versus noise. How are you going to get your signal out there? Don't just view IP and copyright as being one of them. So focus on this loop, make it tight, talk about this innovation in the large. Po Chi Wu, who is here, he's an expert in this. You have all the resources. So let me leave you with that thought, and should you have any questions, please feel free to ask or send me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So today's my topic is about HKUST institutional repository. So as mentioned in the very beginning, if you are an author, you can make your publication open access through different ways. You can publish in Leo's journal, or you can register at Mr. Pindar Wong's licensing bodies to have your license, or with Professor Wong's comments on his journal. And one of the options that you can archive the publications in our HKUST IR, okay, HKUST institutional repository. This is a good opportunity to let me introduce our functions. I know. Okay, sorry. Okay. So today I would like to address these 4 questions. So first one is, what is actually HKUST IR doing, and why the university need IR, and then how will IR work with the scholars, and how IR benefits scholars and the university. Okay. So first of all, it's about the features of our IR. It is a database that using DSpace for storage. Okay. It can compile with the OAI so that the content can be easily discovered by web search engine, for example, Google's. And then its content can be searched by keywords in all fields, has many search functions, or you can particular search in different fields. Okay, this is the features. And we have three main functions. So the first one is we index the HKUST community's scholar outputs. This is a screen dump that our IR's whole list. We already indexed over 61,000 records, and it have different formats. For example, articles, conference paper, thesis, book chapters, book, working paper, patent, technical report, book review, presentation, preprint, composition, research report, and data set. So quite a lot. Okay. And the next functions, we provide a scholar profile for each individual faculties for them to showcase their publications, bibliometrics, research interests, and projects. So this is a examples of screen dump of our Professor Leslie Yip. You can see we produce details information about her title, the contact, any web page, or ID in other database like Scopus. And also we have different tagged full details about her publications, bibliometrics, research interests, and all the projects she is handling. Okay, this is a whole profile of her research project. And the third function is we preserve these scholar outputs and allow them to be openly accessible. So this is one of the examples that Professor Yip's journal articles. This is published in Journal of Neuroscience in 2008. We have the whole record about abstract, the keywords, dates, volume number, user number, page number, whatever. Okay, and we also provide a real-time citation count through Web of Science and Scopus, real-time. And also we provide the OA version of this article in full text for public to download. This is the real OA version. Okay, so these three functions are our core work. So why does the university need IR? Actually, it has the functional needs. The university needs an online archive for its scholarly publications. And the university needs a centralized platform to showcase its research experts and outputs. Okay? But I know this is not a must. Some universities do not have the IR. But as Leo mentioned, or Mr. Pindar WONG mentioned, the worldwide OA development is so fast, and something now become a must. There is mandates. Leo also mentioned. Mandates is a mandatory policy that required by some organizations. The first one will be the institution mandates. So the faculty needs to grant the institution the non-exclusive permissions to make his or her research outputs be openly accessible. So this is some of the examples of institutes that implementing the OA mandate. For example, the MIT in US, the UCL in UK, the NTU in Singapore, and also in Hong Kong, the PolyU has their own OA mandates. So at this point, you may ask, does HKUST has the OA mandates? The answer is no, not yet. But you will say, so why bother me? Because there's another kind of mandates called funders mandate. So the funding agency requires its researchers to deposit a copy of the research publications in an OA repository immediately upon the publications, or with some few months of embargo period. This is their policy. So this is there are some examples of the funders mandates agency that implemented the OA. NIH in US, as Leo mentioned about, and the European Research Councils, and also in Hong Kong, the government's Research Grants Council have their OA mandate. Okay, because we are in Hong Kong, and I think some of you will already working on some projects that are using the Hong Kong government's fund. So I would like to have a detailed discussion about the requirement on OA mandates. So here, if you can see clearly, here is an extract from section 12 of an application form of GRF. GRF is General Research Fund, okay, a common fund. And this is under the responsibility of principal investigator, the PI. Okay, the PI need to undertake these actions upon acceptance a paper for publications. So PI will check whether the publisher already allowed A, full OA to the publisher versions, or B, depositing a copy of papers, either publisher version or final accepted manuscript after peer reviewed in the institution repository for OA. And the second point is that if both 1A and B are not allowed, PI will request publishers to allow to place either versions in the institutional repository for restricted access immediately upon publications, or after an embargo period up to 12 months if required. And the third point is subject to the publisher's agreement on one or two above. The PI will deposit a copy of publication in the research repository as early as possible, or no later than 6 months after publication, or the embargo period, if any. So after seeing this, what is your feeling?
I don't understand.
Surprise? Yeah. Don't understand? A lot of questions. Feeling trouble? Okay. Or still in the car? Yes, here is a lot of concepts and definitions. For example, full OA, full open access, publisher versions versus the final accepted manuscript after peer review. Okay, institutional repository for OA, restricted access, embargo period, publisher agreement, and you need to publish as early as possible. So many things to handle, but don't worry, IR can help you. How could IR work with the scholars to fulfill this OA requirement? Okay, so if you are the HKUST scholar, you only need to do two things. Okay, the first thing is keep the pre-published version of your publications. What is pre-pub version? There's two kinds. The first one is preprint, and the second one is postprint. Preprint is the final manuscript or draft that you submit to the publisher. You write your own work. You always keep the copyright, okay? And postprint is the final accepted version after peer review. So there is some contribution from the publisher or the editorial board. So the copyright usually owned by the publisher. So these two versions, they have different layout or different content. But they are about to publish, but not yet published. So they may not have volume number, issue number, page number. They may not have a very good layout with journal's name or copyright statement, whatever. But these two is the pre-pub version. So please keep these two versions as long as possible with you, okay? So after the publication is published, you can submit these versions to IR through by email or by online system. Then IR team will do the rest for you. Okay. We will keep the copyright with the publishers or the copyright owners. We will confirm which version can be deposited in IR, and we will clarify if there is any licensing requirement, notice of acknowledgement, copyright statement that need to put on the record. And also if there is an embargo period, we will note it and then count the embargo period and then mark on our calendar to do the follow-up. Okay, we will do all the copyright clearance work. So after all this copyright cleared, and we can post the record with the correct version of the articles in IR for OA. Alright, so you don't need to worry about that. We will follow for you. Okay. So, for example, we get the same example from Professor Yip's journal articles, the same record. We have checked with the publishers and know that the copyright remain with the authors. So we put the copyright statement here, and then we can publish, we can upload the published version for OA. Okay. However, there is another case like these journal articles published in IEEE Wireless Communication Letters. The copyright retained by IEEE. So any further use you need to, you need to get IEEE's permissions. So we only allow to upload the PPUB version. So that's why you need to keep the PPUB version for the self-archive in IR. All right. So these two cases are totally different. Now, I would like to let you know that IR can benefit the scholar and also the university. So if you are a scholar, if you are the author, you can own and maintain your centralized profiles to showcase your publications, research interests, bibliometrics, all at once in one platform. Okay, and also you can manage and store all the digital content in one database, including the data for your research as a whole at one place. They can increase the visibility of your research outputs because they are all openly accessible. And you can increase the research impact because the OA output is always easy to cite. And you can fulfill the requirement of OA mandates, if any. And finally, if you can be the pioneer in some fast-moving subjects, as Professor Wong said, time is very important. If you can publish your work as soon as possible, you can make the preprint open access via IR to establish that you are the first one to discover this, and then you can get the feedback quickly. So it's one of the benefits. And IR can benefit the university as well. If university have IR, it can store and preserve the institutional digital assets in one place. But not only the scholarly research output, but also the great literature like thesis or the technical report. And it provides the persistent access to all the contents. So I believe as long as there is HKUST library, I think there is HKUST IR. I'm securing my job. Okay. So we provide persistent access. And also the university can increase the worldwide visibility because all their research output, their scholar, the profile, all the research interests can be easily to discover. And then it can increase the ranking position because with web presence, the university can contribute to the social and economic development because the free access to their research output can be easily viewed by the smaller research institutes or the SMEs. It can stimulate the new research partnership because more channels can be seen through their publisher, their research publications can be seen in more channels. All right. Finally, the university demonstrates the support and commitment to OA, open innovations and open science. So this is a kind of support. You may have a lot of questions about which OA option suit me, how to consider the licensing requirement, what if the publisher do not have the OA option, or how to evaluate the OA journals that Professor Wong has mentioned about that, and how do I know if the journal is green or gold, or the fee is reasonable or not, or should I keep a copyright, or should I transfer to the journal, etc. So I think at this moment, I will not go through details. Please contact me, and then we can have further discussion with you or your whole group or your department to have further discussion on that. Okay? or you can visit our new website, Scholarly Communications at HKUST Library. We put a lot of information about open access, about the IR, about data management, or offering, or other important issue about scholarly communications. Okay, so for today, I may stop here. Thank you. Okay, and from now, I shift back to the MC and then start the Q&A session for today's seminar. So we have all our speaker, Leo, Mr. Pindar Wong, Professor Wong here. So do you have any questions for them or different topics?
Go for it. Well, one question for you.
Excuse me, can I?
Oh, Mike.
Yeah.
My penetrating voice didn't work. You know, there seems to be also a bit of a dichotomy between you choose a license, you assign the license, and the question came up as to irrevocability or not. And the question also I've seen where a license will change over time. Okay. Now, some of this is where someone publishes something and it has an embargo period. After a certain period of time, it becomes open access in an agreement with the publisher. Or, you know, but are there circumstances, I would assume, you can't become more restrictive from the less restrictive, right? But I'm not really sure how much of this has to be decided in advance.
So there's that time element, which is one, it's irrevocable. The concept is to apply the license to your work, and then you release it literally in the wild, and it's irrevocable because practically speaking, it's gone, right? It's on the internet, and then somehow you change your mind, right? And you, as the author, can always decide to apply another license or a variant thereof. But markets being what they are, if there's one with a more restrictive or less restrictive, and they're both from the same author, then people will most likely choose the less restrictive. So, but the point here before, when I mentioned the spectrum of from all rights reserved to some rights reserved, and within the CC concept, there's 6 different variations, is it's really a learning process. Okay, so we're not God-given but we're not naturally born with a deep knowledge of intellectual property and copyright law. Fortunately, the details do matter. Okay, so all CC does is that it packages it in bite-sized chunks, so that as your own intellectual property literacy increases over time, and as your comfort level with applying the license, like any technology, you become more fluent, then your needs change. Your use of it changes your own behavior, and that you see then how useful or not. And so just have in mind that yes, you can always change your mind, but again, once it's out there, it's out there. But really the point being is that this is to step away from the licenses for a moment, but what you're really doing is you're trying to, I would think, execute your own strategy, your own intellectual property strategy, and using the CC licenses where they make sense. So for the example I like to use is defense of publications. Okay, so given that there is a principle of territoriality of intellectual property in certain jurisdictions, if you also, as part of your invention, have in your patents strategy, you say, well, in this location, in this region, you know what, I'm going to publish in. The Koreans are really good at it. I was in Korea last week. What they've got is IP map, intellectual property mapping. In these areas, I'm going to publish in this journal for as a defensive publication. And so when you start thinking about, and that's why I've tried to introduce this intellectual property strategy at the School of Engineering, is because right now, this is the way people are thinking. Okay. I think it's quite dated. I personally think that's a dead end, because of the point I was trying to make earlier, that the rate of innovation now is such that the rate is what will kill you. And being open is actually is increasingly a must, because other networks out-evolve you.
you're not open, you're not in the conversation.
Well, you're a biological dead end, right? I mean, you're not in that dialogue that I talked about beforehand, but dialogue among your peers. And if they're all iterating and polishing their ideas and just feeding off each other as scientists, right? Not as failed scientists. I think that's a really, really important distinction. Having met some of these Nobel laureates last week, they talk about science, right? About the truth, right? These very lofty and the editorial. A lot of the last presentation, last slides about the complexity of the bureaucracy that we create, which gets in the way. People are like saying, you know, I'm a scientist. I want to do science. I don't want to be an administrator. Right? Let me get back to my work. So I think the finesse in all of this is to really challenge the rules as given. I mean, I've been working. Trying to challenge the UGC to say, look, you know, it comes from the public purse. Therefore, you know, logically, you want to monetize that as much as you can. But a lot of it, like the gray market thesis and stuff like that, you know, they're early in their career. It may not be as good as you want. So if you think of it as the journey, I think that journey, that process is really quite. That model is really elegant because everyone begins somewhere, and you're going to make mistakes. So to be tolerant of that, and to have a system, perhaps like HKUST, which is not necessarily religious about anything, let the principal investigator choose, then what you do think through seminars like today is helping that principal investigator make smart choices. Right? And that requires learning of vocabulary, having a mental model of so why are we doing this? And just copyright is one aspect of it. Thank you.
So if there is no other questions, yes, please feel free to take some leaflets from BioMed Central, and also you can have a talk with us off the mic. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you for coming. Thank you.